All right, we're coming in with section 2 of May 1st. We got May Day still happening, and we're on to pork politics. So if you missed Massgate, go to the other video. That'll be up as well. But we're on to pork politics. So what's been going on? I don't fully understand all of the dynamics between the farmer, the processing facility, what the government is doing right now. What's going on with all that?
Yeah. I don't have expertise really in anything except to have a lot of friends who are involved in all this. But you and I, as you know, we have tons of access and family members into this. So I can speak pretty knowledgeably in regard to it, having access people in the know. There's about 16 processing plants for pork in the area. The concern that you hear about is the pork issue, specifically that there was a huge outbreak of coronavirus at the Smithfield plant in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I think there's about 3,100 employees and maybe 1,000 tested positive.
Okay.
Sadly, 2 or 3 have passed away. I don't know if they're specifically from that plant, but it's been a terrible thing for Sioux Falls. Absolutely terrible. So, of the 16 pork plants, I think like 7 of them have closed. 7 or 9 have closed. So we got to the point that the meat industry for pork was at risk of being able to supply food for the public. The same thing was happening at Tyson and chicken plants. The same thing is happening at beef plants. They were all doubly hit by a combo of things. There's huge supply of meat available. There's plenty of pigs, plenty of beef, plenty of chicken. But when you got quarantine, which I think in the future they're going to call it the big Q, not to minimize it because it's a terrible thing. 61,000 have died, which is even more than Vietnam War, and we're only 3 months into it, so it's a terrible thing. Not to minimize it, but I think in the future they might call it the big Q because it's terrible times for everybody. But as the big quarantine started, restaurants had to close. So the demand for meat was already plummeting. So here you have this big supply of pigs and chickens, and the demand was plummeting. And then on top of that, the ability to even take the meat and process it had plummeted. Now get baby little piglets. In fact, we had one of our best friends came when we were in med school in Chicago, came back, and he'd never been out of Chicago, came back to the sister-in-law's farm and got the tour, and he goes, "This is a baby pig factory. I didn't know how it works. They are born in this one building. They are raised from just little things that are cute you can raise in your hand in one end of the building and leave the other end months later fully grown at about 280 pounds. He did not know how the baby pig factory worked. And he goes, and then now what? Well, then after they're at about 280 pounds, 260, 280s, then they go out to be processed. So if you had a big hog farm, like our direct relatives in Northwest Iowa have thousands of pigs on the farm, turns out tens of thousands in a month, they then have to take them into a processing plant like in Sioux Falls, Smithfield, and then they're processed. And what that means, they take a large kill, pig, they euthanize it, and divide it up into the meat product components.
Okay.
There was no place to do that anymore. So now all of a sudden you have all this huge supply, and they were going to have to kill pigs, make a big hole in the field, and bury them. But what has happened is Trump decided to implement what's called the Defense Production Act, I think, DPA, which means you are now assigned as an essential service and you have to keep going, which is still no easy task because now you have to keep this plant going. But what it does is better assure those who are working there that a process has to be in place to also social distance, also have personal protective equipment, visors and masks. I personally worked, that was my first job out of high school. I worked at Wilson's Meatpacking, and I've been on the hog kill, and I know how this works. It's hot, it's stinky, it's dangerous, there's knives flying everywhere, and you're shoulder to shoulder. Those days to move forward are going to have to change with a new process. So it's brutally hard times right now in 2020 as people are looking at this in the future. But we are not yet in a food shortage. Round one was the direct hit we're taking from the coronavirus. And the concern in round one, we wouldn't have enough hospital beds, we wouldn't have enough ventilators, masks, or personal protection devices. We raised to the call. People have been social distancing and doing what needs to be done, and the government ratcheted up. All those things have been accounted for now. In fact, a ship that they brought into LA and then everyone into New York to be an extra hospital, the Comfort, I think, left New York today. So that was the first hit of the virus. The second hit is going to be economically, and maybe even a third or fourth hit. And the indirect hits, just like with you in football, when you get hit to the ground, the first hit that gets you is brutal. But if somebody piles on and hits you indirectly, second or third hit, that's the one that can put you out of the game. So people are really concerned about what this second and third hit will be, and certainly its economy, and they're trying to do everything that it's not decreased food supply. Because you think the population's wily and concerned right now not being able to go to the beach, and we'll talk about Huntington Beach later in episode 3 here.
Yeah.
If the food supply is down, that is extremely dangerous.
Well, what if your the toilet paper aisle is clean right now? It's scary when you look. Yeah. There's no toilet paper. But what if that toilet paper aisle was like the meats and cheeses?
Yeah.
That's where it would really be a game changer.
Who's ever watching this in the future, learn supply and demand, because in that episode, the demand was high, the supply and production can keep up to the toilet paper. This is the reverse of that. The supply is high and the demand is really low. So it's like a flip-flop. So these little episodes are going to be great for the future for like junior and high school to try to figure out what the heck's going on, because we are deep in it. But specifically why Trump did that is we had food shortages in the past. In the Depression, Grandpa Kruger on my mom's side, they stood in the food line in Rochester.
But so in Rochester, like, what are the women and men on the streets saying about this? Like, what's the local newspapers like reporting about? Was this an appropriate decision, or did they feel like forgotten that Trump doesn't care about their lives? Where are the farmers at? What's the thought processes?
The best cartoon I saw was of Uncle Sam in the middle, and in one hand was the left shooting him, saying it's all about safety, don't let anybody go back until there's no deaths. And on the other hand was the right, saying we need our jobs back because the indirect down the line is going to be as bad as the direct. They're in a pickle. And on the street, as you get mixed, I would say in our area, most are saying safety is the huge concern. Absolutely. We don't want any lives lost. That said, let's do everything to try to mitigate it and do everything to come up with a process of social distancing, appropriate. What would Nancy Pelosi say? It's all about the 3 T's. Testing, tracing, if one person has it, following who you gave it to, and then treatment. And so I would say this area right now is say, let's do everything to try to get the plants open in as safe a way as we can, because people are learning and realizing from that TP issue, what if there's not meat out there? A lot of people still eat meat. The government realizes we can't get into that situation. That's a dangerous situation, because humans sometimes do some things that you wouldn't think they would do.
Yeah.
So I think they realize we will not have a food shortage. They won't allow that to happen. So I think I think they're on top of it appropriately. Now I think Trump's going to take a lot of flack for that, but we're going to have to wait and see. A lot of things, everyone's asking for answers. The answers aren't out there yet.
Yeah.
People don't know. It's everyone bugging Columbus when he left Europe. Where are we going to go? How are we going to get there? And everyone's going, We have never done this before.
Right.
We've never done this. So the captain of the ship being Trump / Columbus in this time is going to take a lot of flack, and let's see what's happened. But you have to trust your
Having the farmers back because the farmers are raising the pigs and the these production facilities are their buyer, right? So he's saying, look, we need the buyer to stay in the game because we have the farmers producing things, and although the consumer probably isn't there buying up meats in bulk yet, we're probably preparing for that next round. Or is this Trump not caring about the farmer and saying, you will keep my country alive whether you like it or not, and this is something they're resisting?
No, the farming communities wants to work. They want to work. They've already raised these hogs. They have to work. They have to keep doing it. What is the play right now is a lot of people think there's going to be a run on freezers, now realizing, hey, there could be a shortage in the future. Let's buy a freezer and put it in our garage. In fact, your mom has a request for a freezer.
Yeah, I do remember that was actually her request for her birthday present.
And I'm going to give a plug. I think purple is the greatest for pointing out inconsistencies on both sides. And I just think it's comical when at night the Fox is pointing to MSNBC and say, you're doing everything wrong. And they're doing a lot wrong. Or MSNBC pointing to Fox and saying, you're doing everything wrong. And they are doing everything wrong. Could there be another? It doesn't have to be dichotomy. Maybe they're both doing a little right and both doing a little wrong. Well, now being a purple, I'm going to point out something they've both done wrong. And right now they're saying, Trump should have been more prepared. Why weren't you doing this? Well, let me tell you, the book, the Bible on this was a buddy of mine from Luther, Mike Osterholm, wrote The Deadliest Enemy many years ago.
Okay.
Everybody has known since 1918 about viruses and pandemics. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen, but when. Everybody knew this was going to happen at some point. Caught us with our pants down without a doubt. And I know they'd have 6 months supply of TP.
Yeah.
And God bless them. But did we listen to them? No, because it's not going to happen. So shame on both sides. Let's give a little kindness to everybody. Give everybody a little pass because we can all make mistakes.
Sure.
So what did you hear on the pork issue out there? Were they concerned? I would think, and I don't know this for a fact, it seems like there's more meat eaters here and less vegetarians. I would think it's flip-flop on your side. What's the thoughts out there?
The thoughts out here would immediately jump to the conclusion that this is Trump proving that he doesn't have farmers' backs, and that he doesn't care about their lives, and it proves in the individuals' eyes that I've talked to out here, they would say this is continually proving that middle America votes against their best their best interests. Yeah, they would go, look, this is Trump throwing you under the rug again. He doesn't care about you. And they would go, how has middle America not woken up to the fact that Trump doesn't care about them?
Yeah, I would say that he deeply cares about him, and he's very concerned about this issue, as shown by the fact. I think this is the first time the Defense Production Act has been enacted, maybe since World War II. So he realized it's a big deal, and he addressed it. So
yeah,
hats off to him. I think it's a good thing. I think your meat supply is going to be safe.
And my opinion of Trump right now, currently just with my own thoughts, would be that I do believe that Trump is one of the largest narcissists, and that, interestingly enough, I actually think that because of his narcissism, he doesn't want this country to go awry. I think that he's very fearful of this country falling apart. I don't think he has intentions of destroying it, because personally I think that it's because he doesn't want it to reflect poorly on his name that he's paved in gold through his entirety of his career. And that allows us as Americans to know that this narcissist is going to continue to try to have this ship work out. Now, where it gets a little bit sketchy is I wouldn't be surprised if he lied or covered up things to make it happen, but that's kind of beside this current point. I think Trump does care about the success of America on his own behalf.
And you could be right, you could be wrong.
Sure.
I just hope he does the right thing, and I think both sides on this issue would say he did the right thing. I think he had to get back. Now, those that are all about you can't go back to work till there's no lives lost, and there's a huge contingency for that, and nobody wants any one life lost. But I think we're going to have to come to the conclusion that we're going to have to mitigate this issue. This isn't going anywhere. I think Osterholm was said, and he's the guy that wrote the Dead List. I mean, I won't quote him on this. I'll take that back. I don't know where we heard this, but if this was I heard the reference baseball game. We're only in the second or third quarter. I also heard people change that. If this was a football game, we're only at the end of the first quarter. We're not even in the second quarter yet. And where we're going with that is we've gotten hit hard once. There's a lot of things down the line that are going to be a big challenge. New York Times today, they said there's 2 billion people that have slid into abject poverty from this. 2 billion. America is in its own la-la land.
Yeah.
And so the hits to the rest of the world are going to be brutal. Even here in America, there's 3 or 4 different pandemics going on. There's the pandemic in New Jersey and New York, which is terrible. God, our hats off to them, and we pray for them daily. But that is not the same pandemic that you in Florida have. And that's not the pandemic that we are having, and that's not the same pandemic that Montana is having. So there's 3 or 4 different levels, and that's why, thank God for America, we have a federal system, give you some guidelines and support, but you got to decide on an individual basis what's going on at the governor level.
Yeah.
Minnesota and Iowa have done it almost totally differently, and it'll be fun in the years forward looking back and seeing how we can improve on what we did to make it better. Because this isn't going away.
Right.
This is the wave of things. You're still, just like you heard of H1N1. I remember you coming home and you go, I got the swine. And that was terrible to people at the time. People died of swine. People, we don't have Ebola under
that
control.
one hurt. We
don't have a vaccine yet for AIDS yet, do we? That's been 15 years. I mean, there's lots of treatments. I don't think we have a vaccine. And I
think we've had the second person to ever recover from AIDS has happened. So that's been during this coronavirus pandemic, where they've found their second person during this regimen of new types of treatments that they have available has been clear of AIDS, I think 1 year after treatment. And so that now will continue to be observed. So on to our next topic. So I have Heartland opening, and we'll talk about when the Heartland is going to reopen. I know the governor's been changing some rules around that recently. And then when do we think everything else is going to kind of be opened up? And the word on the street, like, how are people feeling about that? Where are those positions?
Well, the Governor Walz wanted it May 4th. With the nice warm weather, I'll tell you, there's tons of people I know violating a lot of rules. And they, in their own mind, kind of May 1st was kind of what's going to happen. May 1st, a lot of people got out and did some things that weren't maybe directly on the radar of legal. But now he's extended it to May 18th. But they have, this is like a steam pot. You got to let the kettle, you got to let a little steam off there. You don't want it to explode. They did let a little steam off the pot by letting people get back to golfing. Huge. You can boat, hunt, fish, and get out a little bit more than before. So they're slowly easing things up a little bit. unlike, oh my gosh, I have tons of friends I've talked to in Michigan, and they have some challenge there. Oh, Whitmer, what her name is, I think she's a Democrat. You couldn't buy. Here's the two things that drove my friends nuts. They're big gardeners. You couldn't buy seed. They couldn't buy seed. I had to call there. Are you serious? You can't buy seed. Couldn't buy seeds, and you could kayak, but you couldn't be in. You couldn't go out in your boat. You know how many boaters are there in Michigan? I mean, it's surrounded by the lakes. I mean, the amount of
Yeah.
boaters are huge. So those are some things that just didn't ring true. So I think it's a learning process by everybody. Not to blame anybody, but I think there's a lot of improvements that can be made.
What?
But I think my hunch is it's going to go to May 18th, and then it's going to get bumped one more time or two, depending on what's going on. What's the word on the street? Let's get into Huntington Beach now. What's going on there?
So even though it's late in the day and I know that the protest happened today, I have yet to see the images and videos from there. But it sounds like it was a little bit chaotic today, right?
Huntington Beach, by the way, well, give us a background. What's Huntington? Not everybody in the Midwest knows what the hell Huntington is.
Well, so I mean, Huntington Beach is a beach community down here in around Los Angeles. I'm pretty sure Huntington Beach though is in Orange County, right?
Okay.
Or am I wrong with that?
I don't know for sure. I don't even know where it is from Long Beach, up the coast or down. But
I am still a transplant.
Yeah, it's a community in LA. I'm looking at this going, you can't figure out how to to do social distancing on beaches because so you take it from there.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where even the people who have the deepest desire to stay indoors, knowing of the great amount of impact that us being in close proximity conversation locally would say, I want to stay inside, I want to be inside, but I'm really experiencing the day being easier if I'm able to like go outside, see the sun, go for a jog.
You said something extremely important. Everybody thinks health is physical health. That's one component of health. Suicides are up. We're probably going to find murders are up. We're certainly going to find divorces are up. So the downstream indirects of health just aren't what you see on the surface. And think about many conditions over the years. They would say, stay inside, don't get a draft and whatever. And it's like, and 2 years later, they'll go, get outside, get in the sun. You can't tell me this being a major respiratory condition, inhaling and exhaling fully each day isn't a benefit.
Right.
So
and well,
this one I think will be a huge difference.
In Los Angeles, we do have some really busy beaches. Santa Monica Beach, Venice, and then Huntington would be one of those. The problem is they kind of bottlenecked it. So they only had one beach open last week. Everybody went to it. So they
which is shame on them. Do it a better way. Spread it out.
I'm of the personal belief that, and I'm pretty sure this is backed by science, but it's backed by my own experience. My immune system reacts better when I'm outside. And I don't need to be outside all day, but I need to be outside probably 20 to 40 minutes a day in an exercise type of activity, even if it's just one, my physique will look better, but then two, I feel stronger, I feel that I can be awake longer, and these different ailments of having a cough or having stomach aches or feel best air quality that I can find, the best sunlight is all at the beach. And there is a rare time that you find yourself in close proximity in a beach area as long as you remove yourself from the ones that they're talking about. There's like thousands of miles of beach that are available, and that might be an exaggeration, but it's probably
it's not in California,
like,
north to
and
south,
so
we literally have thousands of miles.
but like, as long I am okay with like the no sunbathing thing. Okay, like you can't set up tent, but I do think it would be okay if you can like walk along the beach. You know, like, but it's a bizarre thing. Like, why can't we achieve the 6 feet of distancing at the beach? From my brain that doesn't know much about the science, it seems that if I was outside, the air is moving, which then would allow getting into my system if I was outside relative to inside. I don't know.
Well, unless you're immunosuppressed with like some anti-cancer treatment drugs, your body counts on being challenged every day with antigens coming into the system, which makes your antibody system stronger. It needs to get worked out. So I think there's very limited times where you're supposed to be totally isolated and bubble boy. It just that doesn't make you healthier. So Huntington Beach, that's interesting. It's interesting, just like you're baffled by kind of pork politics out here. We from Minnesota's kind of baffled by the beach thing. So
Beach politics.
The different perspectives from different geographic regions. And in the future, LJ and Purple Politics, I do know he has lined up some very interesting folks that will be very worthwhile. He isn't going to reveal yet who and where and when, but it has never been done before. What you've got planned for our East Coast visitors, it will be awesome. So I think what Purple Politics is doing,
they speak with their heart and they just walk forward every day, and we're willing to communicate. I think that it's a beautiful thing when you can disagree with your friends, and I think having difference of opinion is so valuable.
Disagree with your friends and still be friends. Avoid those friends that only can hang out with their type. What's that? There's no diversity there at all. And I literally have friends I try to maintain who are in those camps.
Yeah.
But some are so right they can only hang out with right. Warming up. But some real warm up things to start educating people in the future. The Flynn event is kind of warming up. Google Flynn, learn about Comey and Strzok and Page and Flynn, and then it'll be fun. Maybe next time we can head up on the Tara Reid thing and what's going on with Biden. So
yeah, I think we'll kind of discuss those in the coming days. Those are things that just hit the press. We do want to always talk about like what our first initial reaction to thing is on this show, but then also we are going to be kind of digesting things too. So it's okay if your initial reaction doesn't meet the same conclusion as what happens 2 weeks down the road from your initial thought. And so I think it's important to have space to say, this is what the headline made me feel, and then 2 weeks later, this is what I really came to conclusion about. And too often we get held and we hold each other responsible for those initial reactions to the headline, which I think media has really got us all grabbed. They know how to divide us with the headline, and we all have to start seeing through that. That doesn't mean there's a problem if you feel something by the headline. It's supposed to make you feel something. But understand, like, don't stay there. Like, digest it a little bit.
Excellent. Great points. Take home for me, too, would be to challenge both sides. Don't believe someone else's interpretation of somebody. Jesse Jackson came. My father thought he was just not a Jesse Jackson fan. His impression from the media, I just don't appreciate what he's saying. He had a chance to see him in person and hear him. He said, you know what? I probably agreed with him more things than I disagreed. That was very enlightening to me. Where I take that personally too, Bernie Sanders came into Rochester, and my right friend said, don't go to Bernie. He's pathetic. Don't go. I went, listened. I appreciate a lot of things he said.
Yeah.
I get him. I don't agree with all of them, but I appreciate it. Same happened when we went to the Trump rally. Oh, how can you go to the Trump rally? He's this, he's that. And it's like, you know what? I want to go see and interpret that myself. I don't need you to determine my opinion. If we can all dress differently and look differently and have a different language, wouldn't it be human if we had different opinions on
Yeah.
things? And why don't we respect that? So, my take home of purple politics is diversity of thought and to be kind to each other and realize we're all humans and we make mistakes. And you know what the heck? All being said, you could be wrong. I
Sure.
just wish at the end of big debates, both sides would maybe have to sign that. All being said, I could be wrong.
And hey, this being our first episode, I think that's a great way for us to be able to sign off tonight. It's perfect. This is what Purple Politics is. It's about having conversation about what's happening in a timely manner and saying what are our thoughts about it, and not always holding ourselves to the initial conclusions that we feel. We let it. We're not always breaking the news. We're just here consuming the news. If we are your only news source, it's not it. We will be able to help direct you to people on either the right or the left that we think have some valid arguments here or there. But then again, I always would say it's probably smart to read both sides.
Godspeed, nice summary. Leading by example, making it by leading by example, making it happen. Service above self. This dad could not be prouder. Thank you for making it happen, Purple.
Love you, Dad, and Godspeed.